Революционного настроя недостаточно для поддержания боеспособности. Нужна еще теплая обувь.
На подходах к городу меня поразило. Сколько вокруг свежих могил и крестов. Это русские. Их убили мы. Разве это не братоубийство?
Из Москвы прислали оружие и провиант. Аж от сердца отлегло. Мы-то знаем, что товарища Сталина в Кремле недолюбливают.
This video was made possible by my patrons, Joshua Bartlett, Scorch88, Drew Cavallo, Thomas Frost, James Schubach, Victor Cage, Douglas Smith, Capitalism is Good, Pipsqueak, Michael, Lady Cthulhu, and Snizzypoo. Thank you so much to all of you. Hello everyone, this is My 2 Cents, and today's video is another patron request. My patron, General Neckbeard, has provided all the battlefield footage used in this video, so check out his channel, link in the description. If you're not familiar with Russian history, the gaming footage behind me is a depiction of the Russian Civil War that lasted roughly between 1917 and 1922, in which several disparate groups known as the White Army fought against the Bolsheviks, or Red Army, who had overthrown the Tsarist system in Russia. The war would end with the rise of the infamous Soviet Union. While most students of history know something about the Soviet Union, I've met very few who discuss the economic system of Tsarist Russia which preceded it. At the dawn of the 19th century, Russia was considered radically backwards by other nations, considering how long the system of feudalism persisted there compared to other countries in Europe. However, there is some evidence to suggest that had the Bolsheviks not managed to seize power, Russia may have been on its way to embracing a far more capitalist economy, which could have fundamentally altered its history. I'd say for the better. That's what we'll be exploring in this video, and you may be the judge. First, a little bit of background. Russia operated under a feudal system officially until 1861. While the serfs were officially emancipated by Tsar Alexander II in that year, elements of the system still persisted long after. By the dawn of the 19th century, more than 80% of Russia's population still consisted of peasants working in agriculture. Under the feudal system, peasant farmers lived in communes, the farmland being distributed amongst peasants mostly on the basis of the number of workers in each household. While peasants were allowed a small amount of land in which they could cultivate food for their own families, the majority of time was spent farming the land in which all the proceeds went to whoever was the land owner. This feudal system led most peasants to live as subsistence farmers, producing just enough for their own families to survive with what little land was allotted for their own use. With the rest of the land being part of communes in which all produce went to the landowner, peasants lacked both the capital and the incentive to modernize, evident by the fact that by 1901, the vast majority of peasants were still sowing and harvesting by hand, perhaps using primitive wooden plows, and few even owning a horse. As a result, poverty was incredibly widespread throughout Russia. Such widespread poverty made Russia ripe for numerous revolutions that were to follow. However, unknown to many, the communist revolution of the Bolsheviks may not have been as inevitable as many Marxists would like to think. After an uprising in 1905, Tsar Nicholas II allowed for the creation of a Duma, or a representative assembly similar to a parliament, and meant to move Russia away from the absolute rule of the Tsar and towards a more constitutional monarchy, like other Western nations had begun to do centuries earlier. The man to become prime minister of this Duma was Pyotr Stolypin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Stolypin introduced a series of reforms aimed at breaking up the rural communes and making the peasants the owners of their own private plots of land. In true capitalist fashion, Stolypin recognized that if the peasants became the owners of their own land, it would fundamentally shift the understanding of their own social status, and perhaps diminish the class struggle that had become the focus of opposition to the Tsar. Having assumed private ownership of the land, peasants would have the incentive to modernize, be more productive, and improve their own financial situation due to the profit incentive that comes with private ownership and a market economy. The implementation of these reforms happened slowly, of course. Government bureaucracies are simply incapable of moving quickly. However, by the beginning of World War I, roughly 10% of peasants had acquired private ownership of their own land, and as Stolypin expected, become far more prosperous than peasants who remained in communes. These peasants became known as kulaks. Stolypin's reforms were not to last, however. In 1911, Stolypin was assassinated by a revolutionary while attending an operatic performance. The outbreak of World War I also slowed the implementation of Stolypin's reforms, and ultimately, the Bolshevik Revolution and subsequent policies of the Soviet Union would again collectivize agriculture, putting an end to the kulaks. As author Martin Malia states in reference to Stolypin's reforms, if they had had 20 or so more years to work, would have solved Russia's peasant problem, and thus would have provided a social foundation for a democratic order. For these reforms were designed to break up the archaic peasant commune into individual holdings and so create a more prosperous and stable countryside. A wager on the strong and the sober, as Stolypin put it. In this liberal view, Russia eventually fell short of her westernizing promise because of the accident of the First World War. This war disorganized Russia's still immature political structures to the point where the Bolshevik Party, a throwback to the violent and conspiratorial politics of the 1870s, was able to seize power in the October coup of 1917. Thus, Russia missed her chance for democracy and relapsed into despotism far worse than any she had known in the past. There are other factors that suggest Russia may have been on the path to a more capitalist economy as well. Industrialization began in Russia in the 1890s due to the guidance of Finance Minister Sergei Witt. While there was not a free market in Russia by any stretch of the imagination, the economy began to grow by about 8% per year until 1910. Economic development continued at a slower rate until the outbreak of World War I, with the government's role in industry slowly diminishing all throughout. Railroad development also came to Russia with the construction of the Trans-Siberian Railroad, leading to economic expansion in the related industries of coal, iron, steel, and machinery. Industry was concentrated in a number of large oligopolies, making for little competition, and the economy was still plagued by the problem of inefficiency, resulting from the lingering traits of the feudal model and government control. However, since men like Stolypin had recognized that private ownership and the profit incentive that comes with it was key to successful reform, it well may have been the case that Russia would have continued to move towards privatization like other Western nations had already done. However, the economic strain that was brought on by World War I would ultimately set the stage for the Bolshevik Revolution, the subsequent Russian Civil War, and the rise of the Soviet Union. In the next video in this series, we'll see how Soviet policies altered the course that Russia had been on in the early 19th century. I have a few videos I need to make before we get to that, but it will be coming, so stay tuned. Thanks again to General Neckbeard, both for this video suggestion and the gaming footage. And that is my 2 cents, so take it for what it's worth. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe. You can also hit the bell to ensure you're notified every time I upload a new video. This video was made possible by my patrons. If anyone else would like to donate and help ensure that I have the time and resources to keep putting out content, for just $1 a month on Patreon or Maker Support, you'll receive your name listed in the end credits and the link to one of your social media platforms listed in the description. You can also support the channel by purchasing my 2 cents merchandise or checking out my Amazon affiliate links. To follow me on Twitter, Minds.com, BitChute, WordPress, Gab, or iTunes, check out the links in the description. Uploads are every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, so stay tuned for more videos.